Thank you very much. Good morning. Is anybody out there? Okay, everybody, if you're in the last two rows, there will be a test. If you don't want to take the test, move forward and come see me. Otherwise, I'm going to talk to the guy in that chair right there. Oh, he's gone. Anyway, so my name is Christopher Durham, as she said. I'm a little bit louder and my slides are a little bit different than a lot of people. But let me tell you a little bit about me. I've spent the last 20 years working either in retail directly or for retailers as a consultant. So I was with what was Del Hayes at the time before the Ahold Del Hayes merger in Salisbury, North Carolina at Food Lion, and ran marketing and private branding there. So that's been 10 years ago. Went from there, worked for Lowe's Home Improvement and ran private brand strategy for them. To give you a little bit of an idea of the scale, private brands at a home improvement store the size of Lowe's are $18 billion. Okay, that's more than all of Del Hayes' sales were put together. So it's a very large program. Consequently, what it did was give me a really good experience across a lot of channels and sectors, a lot of categories. Give me a different perspective, so it's interesting. So this is usually where we start, right? Unfortunately, most of you are not actually old enough to remember this. Who actually remembers this? A couple of you, right? You don't remember this, no. I'll tell you, it's a bit of urban legend and myth that this is where private brand started. Certainly is what happened in the 70s and early 80s. If you're a bit of a movie nerd, this is Ralph's from California. This was actually in Repo Man, not this physical one, but this is the brand that you saw in Repo Man, right? Let's talk about what really happened over the years. Oh, that was loud. So out of the 70s and 80s came a very large growth of that white sort of generic. And what retailers very quickly figured out was shitty product at a low price doesn't sell. Okay. We're still working on figuring that out, unfortunately. It evolved in the 80s and early 90s to this sort of very NBE, sort of here's my raisin brand, here's the real raisin brand, and it's 30% less. Great for margin, great for volumes. Nobody ever loved you for knocking something else off, though. So strictly a margin play, strictly a volume play. But let's talk about this. Private brand actually, in the United States and in the world, honestly, goes back a lot further. So as long as there has been retail, there has been somebody putting their name on things and trying to get you to come back to them. This is actually R.H. Macy's, little dry goods company that's now a pretty big department store, right? So for the hipsters in the crowd, there's not many of you. This is what a growler looked like in the late 1800s, only you got whiskey in it, right? It's a couple of weeks, right? But they were trying to build their brand. They were trying to, and remember, this is pre-CPG. This is pre-Procter & Gamble. If you look at A&P, if you look at Walgreens, they were all doing things with their brands, either pre-CPG or concurrent with CPG, because they knew it was about you choosing them. Now, there obviously wasn't as much competition at the time, but it was there. So 11 years ago, I was working for a retailer, and I honestly hated my job. Really hated my boss. The retailer was a pretty good retailer. And I started writing a little blog. It's my private brand, so mypbrand.com. And honestly, I just wanted another job, wanted to get out. Over the course of 11 years, I've been writing about retailers leveraging private labels as true brands, as points of differentiation, as a strategic change. Okay, it's not to say that margin goes away or that volumes go away, but it's to say that if you own and operate and manage a brand, it can add value to your bottom line, and it can add value to your company. Okay? So within the course of about 5 years, I was making more off of the website than I was at the retailer I was working at. Okay, and left to consult and do all of that. Now 11 years later, we're operating the website, My Private Brand, which publishes every day, talks about private brand from all around the world. in every channel, so not just wine and alcohol, but everything. We operate a conference in the US called the Velocity Conference that will be May 2020. It will be the 4th year of it. We're launching our inaugural US conference or a European conference in Lisbon, Portugal in October. If you'd like to come here from the SVPs and the VPs of major retailers. So this past year we had the SVP from Walmart, the SVP from Kroger, the VP from Publix, and so on, about 30 of them. Then please join us. We also, 6 years ago, launched a international private brand package design competition with the idea that this white packaging isn't where we should be and that we should be leaders in design. So over the course of those 6 years, we've had about 3,000 entries from 66 countries. I can't name 66 countries, but it's been amazing, and it's been from just outstanding work, not only from the US, from New Zealand, from Australia, from Denmark, all over the world. So very exciting. I also have published 2 books on private brand. The first one was a study, 5 years ago, on the right there, 52, that looked at the 52 best private brands in the United States as I saw them. My book, my opinion. The second one, which is where these vintage packages came from, I actually collected about 150 vintage packages going back to the early 1800s. Included an example of very first Craftsman wrench, and a lot of cool stuff. So if you're interested in vintage packaging and stuff, it's super cool. Both are available on Amazon. In addition to that, I do consulting. So we have a team that works very, very closely with either the retailers on their higher level strategy. So where do we want to win? How do we want to win? Who are the customers we want to win with? And do our brands actually accomplish that? And we work with manufacturers and brokers to help deliver on that. So it's saying, okay, winemaker X, you've been talking about yourself a lot. Now let's talk about Kroger and figure out how your goals and their goals can align, and we can all push forward to sell more stuff. Make sense? So, whiskey, wine, and winning. You sell a whiskey jug, that's a good start, right? Winning. So we kind of live in this world where retail is changing, and what's going to happen over the course of the next 28 minutes is I'm going to talk about private brand in general for a little while. I'm going to give you a kind of an idea of where it's going, and then we'll talk about wine and spirits. We can't really talk about retail without talking about Google and Amazon, right? It's changed the way people act. Whether you're 60 or 16, it doesn't matter. You probably shopped on Prime Day. Whether you're 60 or 16, it doesn't matter. The first thing you do to find out a piece of information is Google it, right? It's changed the way we shop. It's changed the way we behave, such that there was a point in time 10, 20 years ago where a Walmart could say, we have the most stuff and we have the cheapest stuff. It's impossible for a bricks and mortar retailer to have the most stuff now. They might have the cheapest stuff if they're lucky, but if you Google it, you'll know very quickly. Okay. We also have this cohort, right? The millennials, even worse, the Gen Zs, always on their devices, ready to search for everything. They love transparency. They want to know where you got it, what you're doing with it, and are you giving back? And that scares the hell out of a lot of people. That's a whole different presentation, but I'm here to tell you that's not going to change, so embrace it. We also have this, right? And it's calmed a little bit, even though it shouldn't. So the whole conversation about the retail apocalypse and store closings, we're still closing stores at thousands and thousands of stores every year. Now, there's stores, to be quite frank, that are no longer relevant in many cases. They're not all grocery. Some of them are mall. There's all kinds of things going on. My children were sad to note that Claire's had declared bankruptcy. If you're a little girl, you know that. Oh, and Charming Charlie's, my wife is telling me. So, but there's a lot of change happening. Now, what I think that means for private brand and for retail in general is not that bricks and mortar die, not that online wins. It's that irrelevant, crappy stores will not survive. So private brand has a role in helping that. So let's talk about what I mean when I talk about private brands a little bit. In this business, it's very, So if I want to sell cereal, I can start a brand as a retailer. I can be Kroger and say, here's the name of my brand. It could be Kroger, it could be something else. And I can do it very quickly and it can go to a whole lot of stores. Unfortunately, in this business, there's a lot of legislation. So the way we have to define it is a bit more broadly. So it's really retailer owned or controlled brands. It's fuzzy, it really is, and they were talking about it a little bit yesterday, and it's hard to tell who owns what and how they own. So what we default to is how the retailer behaves. So if they are behaving like they own it, it's a private brand. The laws we all know are just a pain in the ass. And honestly, the laws are what keeps the penetration of private brand in wine and spirits down. It's really easy to make private brand Cheerios and push it out to 10,000 Walmarts. Okay, it's almost impossible to do that with wine because of the states and the laws and the counties and the ABC stores and you all know it more than I do. So what we look for when we're saying is a private brand is, first of all, we're looking for any public announcement, so press releases. Are they talking about it as if it's theirs? We're picking up the back of the bottle or the pack. We're reading distribution clauses. Are they claiming it, right? We're doing trademark searches and seeing who actually owns that mark. We're looking at their advertising, their flyers, their websites. We're looking in store to see how they're marketing it. So if they're behaving like they own the brand, whether they do or not because of whatever legal reason, then we are calling it a private brand. This is the only category that's true, and everything else, it has to be they own it, okay? The average national retailer has between 12 and 20 brands. Okay, that's a lot more than most people think, right? So you think it says Kroger on the pack. Well, it doesn't really matter whether it says Kroger on the pack. Okay. What matters is, do they own it? Do they manage it? Are they using it as a brand? If you look at Target and Walmart, they have more than 100 brands. Target's been on a spree of late, and we'll talk about it. So they've launched almost 30 brands in the last 18 months. You think, gosh, retailers own all these brands. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because in this industry, there's a lot of people that own a lot of brands, and it's not exactly transparent to the average wine drinker. So E.J. Gallo has 75 plus brands. Diageo has 70 plus brands. Constellation has 100 plus brands. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is, in the United States, giant corporations own a lot of brands. Retailers are giant corporations. As they shift to becoming brand owners, it's really no different. So, a little bit about the strategy piece. So if we look in the very center here, it says margin, and it's always going to say margin. And really, it's an evolutionary process for retailers. So retailers always start at margin. They always say, gosh, I can get a few more points if I do X. As they evolve and grow, they hire smarter, better people. They're trying to beat Amazon. They're trying to do other things. They can begin to move up the continuum. So they look at it for flexible sourcing reasons. There's a way I can price compete. They look at it for value. They look at it to simplify the shopping experience. There are many categories. If you go in a Walmart, outside of food, so you go shop lamps at a Walmart, every one of them is a private brand. And what they're doing is they can tell the entire story because they own everything. They're not having to compete with everything. And then they're getting to innovation and differentiation. Those are the keys right now, and that's what's scaring the hell out of retailers. Amazon is scaring the crap out of them, right? So if you're walking in selling a program, you better understand what their needs are and how they're trying to win, because their goal is to get you in the store or on their website, first and foremost, versus Amazon. So, are they actually managing brands? Well, let's look at a couple of them. So Kroger, Simple Truth is the largest natural and organic brand in the United States. It's $2 billion plus. Okay, Kroger currently has a 28% private brand penetration. It's high. Okay, if you read their annual reports, if you listen to their calls, they talk about private brand consistently. In the last annual report, they mentioned it 37 times. It's important to them. If you don't know that stuff and you're going in to sell to Kroger, you are at a disadvantage. Okay, Walmart. But Walmart obviously does not report this number, so it's $30 billion on great value. That's the largest packaged goods brand in the world, period. Okay? They're at 18% in grocery private brand penetration and at 55 plus across the store. And you don't realize it. So if you're in fashion or home goods or camping, if you've ever bought Ozark Trail, it's all their brands. Right? National brands do not play the same role. Then of course Costco, how could you not? So $40 billion is basically 25% of their sale, and it's only going to grow. Retailers are shifting to a place where we're competing to gain a couple of extra pennies, to gain a little margin, to a place where we have to win or we will not survive. Okay, that's a huge transition. A huge transition. And I'll tell you, they're being squeezed out by the Aldis and the Lidls on the bottom and the Sprouts and the Whole Foods and all these guys on the top. So those middle of the road grocers, if they don't figure it out, will not exist. They won't all exist. I can tell you, where I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, within a mile and a half of my house, there are 10 different grocers. Okay, there are 3 drugstores, but there are 25 of those stores. They won't all survive. They just won't. So, if we look across the world, where we are in the US, it's kind of here in the middle. So it's 18%, that red line. Here's my one big obligatory chart with a whole lot of data on it. The United States is an interesting thing. We came out of World War II, and we're really, really in love with brands because there was no regulation on TV, there was no regulation on advertising to children, there was just nothing. And sameness and manufacturing was sexy back then. It's not anymore, right? When you look at the global average, it's at 16.6%. You take China out, which drags it down a lot, you get to 18.7%. So interesting data. If you look across kind of the big players here in private brand, this is in grocery. Wegmans sits at 34%, H-E-B 31%. If you're calling out best-in-class retailers, that's it, right? Not just wine, not just private brand, just if I'd love to shop a Wegmans, put one in my backyard. And then of course wine. So wine numbers are hard to get to, but there's a few people reporting. So you're at 8 to 10% on domestic wine sales, and 17% of total wine sales for the big retail chains. Honestly, it's not an embarrassing number, but it should be a lot bigger. So let's talk about a few of the retailers. Mostly what I'm going to talk about is things that I think that are interesting that have happened in the last 18 months. So Trader Joe's, of course, how do you not talk about Trader Joe's and private brand wine? Charles Shaw just kind of is what it is. You know, you pay $2 or $3, you get what you get. They do a lot of volume. If you really pay attention, they've adjusted their design strategy a number of times. So Charles Shaw gets bigger and smaller, and sometimes Trader Joe's is on it, sometimes it's not. And it just depends on what executive's in charge that day. I mean, I'd like to tell you it was a bigger strategy, but I don't know that it is. They launched Charles Shaw Organic, completely different design strategy, so they're not even trying to attach themselves to the brand that they've built over the years. But it seems to be doing pretty well, and if you walk stores, it has pretty good stackouts. And then, of course, they've got all sorts of higher-end product in Reserve and a lot of other things. If you add in the whole exclusive brand conversation, there might be another 30, 40 brands in there that they have control over in some way, and it changes day to day. So it's, walk it and look at it. They're best in class. They're good at wine. Wine is important to them. Honestly, Trader Joe's and Costco, wine is probably more important to than the vast majority of just traditional retailers in the United States. They've launched simpler wine. Somebody yesterday talked about the canned wine trend. Everybody's doing it. They're all trying it, so we'll see. I had a couple of these and there was, okay, I don't know. I think I'd rather have a bottle, but. And then in a select group of stores where liquor is legal, they have a whole set of liquor as well. In North Carolina, you cannot sell it because it's only an ABC store. So I've never actually bought liquor from Trader Joe's. Costco. how do you not talk about Kirkland Signature? But the key to Kirkland Signature is, honestly, no offense to anybody, it's not about wine and liquor. It's about Jim Senegal 20 years ago saying, we're building a brand that's our brand that we can be proud of, and staring the merchants in the face and saying, if you put any shit in my brand, I'm firing you. Okay? So that consistency and that control over quality, they're never going to have the most SKUs. They don't care. But they want you to love Kirkland Signature, and people do. Such that my darling wife over there now owns athleisure, now owns basically Lululemon, this Kirkland Signature brand that blows my mind. Why would you ever have cleaning products in the same thing as yoga wear? Well, you know what? She bought it. She loves it. If they still had more, she'd buy more. Correct? Yeah. So they also do a great alcohol program. If you follow online, this program is talked about. Search for it. There are people out there every day trying to figure out who makes all this stuff and guessing wildly. They're probably right on some of it. They're probably wildly wrong on some of it. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you've never bought it, you should try it. It's a great value product generally. The fun thing about Kirkland's and Trader Joe's is there's really no embarrassment about it, right? So if you live in suburban America and you have a bottle of Kirkland's vodka, it's okay. People are like, okay, that's cool, I'll have that. There's no shame in it. There's no stigma. So Aldi is the little discounter that could, right? They just kind of snuck up on the U.S. Lidl came in with a big bang and kind of famously had to walk away with their tail between their legs, and they're slowly growing. But Aldi just showed up, and they all of a sudden built hundreds and hundreds of stores. The story for Aldi is they just do a nice wine program. Okay, if you're a suburban mommy and you've got a nice new store, you're going to go shop it, you're going to go try it. It's great price points, it's stuff you may not have heard of, but that's okay because you trust them. Right? It doesn't say Aldi on the front. It doesn't matter. Okay. Such to a point that this was their wine advent calendar. So it was 24 little bottles of wine in various grapes, and it sold out nationwide in 20 minutes. Okay. People were lined up outside of Aldi to buy this thing. Was it good? I have no idea. I didn't get one. So what I know is customers wanted it. You don't see people at this price point excited and standing in line for wine, but you did at Aldi. Okay, they're doing a great job with it. They've also done a really good job of improving their design across the board. So this is, as she mentioned, the Vertex Awards, our international design program. This actually won a gold at the Vertex Awards for them. That's a $5 bottle of wine. It's okay. It looks like it's an expensive bottle of wine. They're nice finishes, nice design, fresh out of California there. So let's talk about Target. Brian Cornell, we're investing to win share, not surrender it. Over the last 3 years, Target's launched 20 plus new brands representing more than 20 billion in sales. In wine, of course, there's this whole $10 trend right now across the big boxes and more. So this is the collection. They launched $9.99. You see there are 5 bottles, a bunch of different grapes. Merchandised very, very well. They had end caps in just about every store that I saw, and they were pairing it up with product. Last year, or in 2017, they launched California Roots. So $5 bottle. It's nice looking. Again, this was merchandised well. They were trying to be in the wine business. They're never going to have a giant wine set, even in the big stores, they don't. But they can win at what they're doing. And of course, Wine Cube's been around for years. They've done very well with it. They'll surprise those boxes don't, but they've won all sorts of awards for it. So $16.99 for the Wine Cube, and they launched cans as well. And cans in bubbles, which you don't see that much of. Walmart's the one that's a little scary, right? Because they've always said we're in the national brand business. So Greg Ferran, as customers become Walmart private brand adopters, they make more trips and they spend more. As they become more engaged with private brands, they become more engaged with Walmart. Let that sink in. Okay. If you're not pitching Walmart with this in mind, you are pitching incorrectly. And of course, they launched Winemaker's Selection here in 2019, $11 collection. It's a lot of bottles for a Walmart. That set's not that big, and they're merchandising it as well. 2010, they had launched Lucky Duck. It's following that whole let's slap an animal on a bottle trend. But it worked. $3.99. Really, this is diminished greatly. When you walk the stores, you don't see it that much. There's a few of the bottles left, but it's still out there a little bit. And Oak Leaf 2008's been out there a long time. The stuff, I hope none of you make it. This is terrible. If you make it, I apologize. I'm sure it's what Walmart asked for, but 7-Eleven, I think this one's intriguing. It's convenience. So you think, well, how much can convenience do? They've got, 700, 1,000, 1,500 square feet at most. What do they have? 5 bottles of wine in there. It's not that much. Well, they're actively chasing things. So in their new concept store in Dallas, they've launched Totem, which Totem, if you don't know the history of 7-Eleven, goes back, and after Prohibition, there were Totem stores, which were actually the first convenience stores that sold liquor. So they've resurrected this brand name, which is kind of super cool, and they're telling stories about it in the store. And all of this stuff is on tap in store. So there's actually 3 different varieties of wine that you can pull on tap in the store. You can do the growler, you can do the can. If you're in Dallas, you should go see this store. It's a really cool store. They launched Voyager Point, another 10. See, that $10 price point keeps popping up, right? Nobody wants you to really trade down to that $3.99. They'd rather sell you a little bit better product at a $10 price point. And of course, the canned wine doesn't seem to go away. Will it survive? I don't know. You're the wine guys. You tell me. And a Trojan Horse in 2017 as well at a $6.99 price point. It's a pretty big set for a convenience store, and given how many stores 7-Eleven has in the world, I mean, you're talking 10 and 20,000 stores globally. The opportunity for them to sell wine is huge. And then Yosemite Road at $2.99. They're doing a nice job with the design. The wine is what it is. It's $3. What the hell do you expect? But you're not embarrassed of it. It doesn't look like, it's a little fun. It's fine. Ultimately, they're all trying to win. They're all trying to figure out who that customer is that's going to choose them and create products. And what they're doing is looking for you guys to help. Okay, the reality of most merchants and retailers is they move around a lot. Okay, they may not, or probably are not specialists or experts in the category they're in. And then when they become it, they move them to another category. Your job should be to help them win and ask them questions. Honestly, when I consult with retailers, the end goal for the last 2 or 3 years has been this. It's been, we want to be able to create and manage brands that merchants champion and customers love. Everybody talks about customers. If you can't get the merchants on board, if you can't keep them interested, if you can't get them to say, I want to be a part of that, it's going to die in 6 months. Bottom line, if the merchants stay engaged, if they champion it, they keep it on shelf, they merchandise it, the whole 9 yards, you can build products and brands that customers love as well. Ultimately, retailers own brand portfolios. Each brand should do a different thing. They should talk to a different customer. It's no longer just about knocking stuff off. Don't get me wrong, that stuff still stays. There's always going to be a little bit of that. But they're also going to add brands where it has value. If I were calling on Kroger today and saw Simple Truth was a $2 billion national organic brand and knew they didn't have wine in it, I'd be pitching it in Simple Truth. They could do it. People trust them. So let me end this way. First of all, listen. So it's easy when you go in and pitch to talk about yourself, to talk about how the science and the weather and the wine and just get so deep into it. it's just self-serving, to be quite frank. Listen to what their needs are. Listen to what they're trying to accomplish and cater your pitch to that. Yeah, they want you to be an expert, but man, they're going to get bored by your science really quick, I promise. Okay, they're going to get bored by your, I can't fulfill because the weather was X. They don't care. Listen. Okay, know their goals. Very often with a retailer, I will say, what are your goals? How do you make your bonus? Tell me what, and let's figure out how we can work towards that. So those could be consumer goals, those could be sales goals, those could be I need to reach X population, we're trying to go after Hispanics, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If you don't know them, you can't help. I promise you, if you can help them accomplish their goals, you will all win together. So collaborate. If they trust you and you're an expert, they'll work with you. Otherwise, you're defaulting to procurement. If you default to procurement and they're buying truckloads of juice, you are screwed. Okay, that's just a computerized program. That's the cheapest possible price. Nobody wants to play there. So again, be the expert. Walk in, study as much as you can. Walk their stores, talk to their customers, ask people. The more you know when you go in, the better off you're going to be. And finally, make it easy for them. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in with retailers where when we got to the subject of alcohol, it just stopped because some of the states were too hard, the distribution was too complex. It just was difficult. The more you can facilitate ease of distribution and in making it happen, the better chance you have of succeeding. Otherwise, they go, Texas, that's too hard. South Carolina, no liquor in South Carolina, it's all in AB. There's just too much going on. So that's it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Questions?
Coming with a mic, stand by.
I'm not a wine expert, so do not ask me wine questions.
My question is, do you see a trend towards smaller serving sizes for wine, i.e. 1 or 2 servings?
Certainly. So how big that trend is going to be, who knows? So if you look at, in Walmart, that oak leaf bottle, a lot of those are smaller bottles so that they can hit a price point. Aldi and Lidl both like smaller bottles. Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Dollar General are all looking for specific price points to hit. You're never going to make a lot of money off those guys, but there's a lot of volume. So does it dramatically change the industry? No, it's not going to dramatically change the industry, but it could be a piece of it.
As a smaller producer, when I heard you say make it easy, I think Southern or these big houses that have vast distribution networks that will fulfill every potential store location. We found that as a small producer, the big guys don't give us the love or attention we need. How as a small producer, what other ideas do you have for a small producer?
The first idea is know your business. So if you can't possibly fulfill Walmart, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be rude to anybody, but there are still a lot of regional players. So if you're however big, well, there's still Wegmans, there's still H-E-B, there's still Hy-Vee, there's still Sprouts. There's a lot of players that you could potentially fulfill, but you need to understand the business. Now, that being said, the biggest way across every possible category to screw things up is with logistics and distribution. If you don't have good people handling that, and you get chargebacks and you get all kinds of stuff, you can be out of business tomorrow because of it. So has nothing to do with wine, I'm telling you. But know your business. And yeah, it's sexy for Walmart to call you or Target or whoever, and some of them have some regional place that you can work on. But honestly, go after the regional guys. I mean, I know the VP of Fairway Markets in New York. They've got 9 stores. So you think 9 stores, that's not much, right? Those are the 9 highest volume stores in the country because they're all in the city. Okay, he sells a lot of wine. Yeah. Find those people. They'll talk to you. But be honest with people. Say, hey, this is how we can help you. This is where we can make it easy. Because if you're trying to out-Southern Southern, you're playing the wrong game. Okay?
We have time for one more question. Okay, it's you.
Do you have much experience with Sprouts? Because I think they have been revolutionary. I've watched them in terms of how they go about their buying.
Yep.
So example, cherries, right? All cherries are not the same. They will go to the same grower of cherries. They'll take their B cherries, the ones that got damaged in the rain a little bit.
Yep.
They'll run a special on those. So as a small producer, if you can find a way in to work with those guys, they seem to be more innovative, at least.
Yeah, and I think that, Sprouts is interesting. So I'm actually doing some work with them right now, talking about sustainable packaging, and they're trying to actually go back to the source on a lot of products, whether it be the weight of the glass bottle or plastic usage or whatever. There's a lot of things they're actively pursuing. It's not a secret. They've talked about it. I think there's a lot of you guys that if you'll look for those kinds of retailers, and they talk about it, Google is your friend. Go start searching and seeing what people are talking about, looking for names. The Sprouts, the Fresh Market in Greensboro does the same kind of things. As I said, Fairway and the Hy-Vee in the Midwest, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It just takes a little legwork, and they're not as sexy. That being said, if you can get a Sprouts and you can fulfill and you can make them happy, the odds of you keeping that contract are pretty high. The odds of you keeping a Walmart contract, no matter how good you fulfill, are pretty low, because it's going to go out to bid again in 18 months. Just, you will constantly be chasing that. Okay, are we good? I'll be here for a little while if you have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christopher.